Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the old masturbator, and we're here to do a really low key celebration of our 200th episode. This is our 200th episode, and I'm not going to do anything special because I'm almost suicidally depressed by what this country's become and what this world's turning into, and the idea that as we're all happy to see some people leave the White House and that whole entourage of nuts. I just keep thinking of the people they left behind that run this country and who've been supporting them for years. I'm sorry. I know no politics in the bathtub, but tough. This 200th episode, I can do a little bit of politics. And what we're going to do is have a special. I want to do something special because I didn't want to do sparklers because I'm too depressed. And I didn't want to bring in the whiteboard because it's too heavy. I didn't want to bring it all the way in here. And I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a series of countdowns, countdown to the inauguration. I can't stand Joe Biden, I never thought I would reach a point in my life where I'd be actually looking forward to that idiot going into the White House. But let's cross our fingers, give him the best of luck, and hope he can do something. But I'm basically looking at this as just a countdown to getting that idiot out of the White House so we don't have to listen to him for a while, and maybe he'll go to jail. That's my personal hope. And take his family with him. The countdown is this. I'm going to do a different episode every single day until the 20th of January. So that means I'm going to probably do 2 or 3 at a time, and they're going to be very short, and they're only just going to be for fun. And I'm just going to give you books and ideas that are kind of sitting around to kind of help to keep time in the bathtub, because it's been very hard for me to spend time in the bathtub without checking the news. Okay, so one of my favorite books, my favorite movies, and I love this movie, is Ed Wood. It's the only Tim Burton movie I really love. I like a lot by Alexander Karaszewski or whatever they are, the screenwriters. I watch it every year or two. I love Johnny Depp. Give it a very quick plug. And I honestly think if I could be anybody in the world, I wish I could be the Johnny Depp's version of Ed Wood, a guy who just doesn't know what he's doing and loves doing it. And that's my aspiration. He's the person I aspire to be in my life. So I love this movie, loved it for many years. You might all know it's about all the kind of weird, not just about Ed Wood, it's about all the kind of losers and oddballs in L.A. in the early 50s, including Bela Lugosi, who hung out, who knew him, and who was in this kind of, who ended up in that horrible movie Plan 9 from Outer Space, which many of us grew up laughing at on late night television. So one of the characters is Vampira. I didn't know anything about Vampira except what I knew from this movie, which was she was this very sexy, kind of wasp waist, big-breasted woman who wore tight outfits and was very sexy and was sort of disdainful of Ed Wood in the movie, played by Lisa Marie. And that's all I knew about Vampira. I knew kind of iterations of her. People like, Elvira. Most of my generation knows Elvira. But Vampira was before my time. She was basically on KBC TV in the early 50s. So before I was even born. She was the first person who kind of hosted a show that I know of about bad horror movies where she made jokes about them. When I was growing up, we had Creature Features. Creature Features was this guy. He was a nerd in glasses who would pretend to be scary, and he wasn't scary, but he would have old horror movies. And I used to watch that when I was growing up. But Vampire was around before that. She did lots of kind of double entendre jokes. And the thing is that nothing that Vampira did was really filmed. There's very little film footage because they didn't have the technology to capture these. She did live broadcasts late at night. I want to say Friday or Saturday nights. And no one ever saved these. So she was a woman who had done a lot of other things. She'd been a pinup model. She'd been an actress. Howard Hawks had brought her to Los Angeles to be his next big. She was going to be his big ingenue after Lauren Bacall. And they had an argument. It sounds like she was a difficult and very smart woman to work with, but difficult at the same time. And so she tore up the contract, and eventually ended up. She liked to sew. She was a big seamstress, and she liked to sew her own clothes. And she sewed up a Morticia outfit, like Charles Addams' Morticia. This is before the Addams Family was a TV show. It was very popular in the New Yorker cartoons. And she did this dance. She danced at some Hollywood Halloween party and sort of was discovered by some TV guy. And eventually she worked out a deal where she would play this Vampira character on late night TV. and play it very sexy and very tight. I mean, really, she was really too sexy for television, and she got away with it because it was late at night, and they didn't probably have enough rules in the television business then. At the same time that she was doing these very tight numbers and doing these jokes, many of which were quite dirty, quite her jokes. Her double entendres were pretty filthy when you thought about them. She was pretending she was a vampire, and she was introducing and making fun of the bad movies. At the same time, Ricky and Lucy couldn't even sleep in the same bed. You notice they had slept in separate beds. No, God knows where little Ricky came from, but they did sleep in separate beds. Vampira didn't care. She made lots of sexy remarks and did this vamp number. She was only on for a couple of years because as soon as she got very successful, she was asked to be a guest on the most popular show at the time, which was the George Gobel Hour. And her boss at KABC fired her for going to this rival network. He was probably a creep. It's a long way of telling you that when I saw a book coming out about Vampira, everything I learned about Vampira, I learned from this book by Sandra Niemi, and it's about the real Vampira. Her name was Mela Nurmi, and it's a really, really fun, interesting, enjoyable book. Not just about the real Vampira, who was a very interesting character, but she was also friends with. I mean, she seemed to have been friends with all the most handsome and important movie actors. James Dean, Anthony Perkins. She knew Marlon Brando used to climb through her living room window to visit her for years. They were friends until the 70s. And she had many ups and downs in his career, Mela. And I guess at the end of her life was actually just selling clothes at swap meets and stuff. But she sounded like a really powerful, interesting, strange, interesting woman. And I enjoyed the book very much. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would when I saw it being listed as coming out. It's a first-time piece of writing. Sandra Niemi's never written a book before. And she did a really good job of kind of piecing together what information she could get about this fascinating woman. And that was one of the best movie books I've read. It also kind of gives a good picture of Hollywood in the 50s. The Hollywood that is so beautifully done by Tim Burton. She does a really good job of kind of recapturing that period and the sort of way that world was running. It reminded me of another book, so I went back and I reread Rudolph Gray's book about Ed Wood. Again, they're unfortunately, Vampira is only known for her association with Ed Wood, and it was probably the least important part of her life. She just did this one little crappy movie with him because she needed a little bit of money. Had very little association with Ed Wood. She's interviewed in this book. It's a fun biography. Really a lot of fun if you haven't read it and you did like the Tim Burton movie. It's basically just told in interviews. There's old Vampira there. Nice shot. In Plan 9. Probably the only way you've probably seen her before. It's all interviews with people who knew Ed Wood at the time and what a character he was. And again, I really enjoyed this book as well. Rudolph Gray's Ed Wood, Nightmare of Ecstasy, who's supposedly the worst movie director of all time. I don't know if he was the worst of all time, but he was certainly pretty bad. Anyway, these are really fun. If you're Hollywood buff like me, if you like old Los Angeles like I do, I would really recommend them. I'm going to put a link to my Los Angeles Times piece just so you can kind of fact check me because I forget everything all the time, and you can read a little bit about Vampira and her friends and all the people who she was friends with over the years. Okay, that's countdown. We're down to I don't know what this is. Should do a countdown like it's 6. I think we have 5 more days of that idiot. So something like 5 more days. This is our 200th spectacular thing. Pretend there's fireworks. And we're going to stretch out the 200th episode until that idiot's gone. Okay? Happy bathing. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to do one of these every day. It's going to be too much excitement. Too much excitement and too much bathtubs.